The morning she turned 18, May Holloway did not eat breakfast. She sat in the back room of the chapel while her mother pinned the veil into her hair with shaking fingers. And outside the windows, the dust of Cutter Creek was already rising in the July heat, coating everything in a fine red film that never fully washed out. The organ had started. May could hear it through the walls. Her hands were cold. She had met Cole Hargrove exactly 4 times before today. 4 times. And now she was about to walk out there and belong to him. That was how her father had said it. Belong, like a horse that had changed hands, like a parcel of land with a deed attached. Cole Hargrove owned half of Cutter Creek. The other half wanted to be owned by him. He had a ranch that stretched farther than a man could ride in a day, cattle that numbered in the thousands, and a jaw that looked like it had been cut from the same red stone as the canyon walls east of town. May had noticed the jaw. She had also noticed the way he watched her the first time they met across her father's kitchen table, a slow and measuring look that made her feel like she was being appraised at auction. She had been 17 then. Now the organ was louder, and her mother said, "Stand up, May. It's time." And May stood. She did not cry walking down the aisle. She held her chin level and kept her eyes on the wooden cross above the altar and told herself she was not afraid. And she was not afraid. She was not. Cole was already standing at the altar. He had cleaned up for it, dark coat, white shirt, boots polished to a mirror shine. He was 31 years old and looked like the land had made him the same way it made canyons. Slowly, without apology. When May reached him and her father placed her hand in Cole's grip was steady, warm. He looked at her, not past her. That surprised her. "You look scared," he said, quiet enough that only she could hear. She wanted to say she wasn't. She said nothing. "I won't bite," he said. The corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile, something older than a smile. The Reverend started talking. May focused on the cross. She said the words when the Reverend told her to say the words. She felt the ring slide onto her finger, a simple gold band that had been his mother's, and she thought that was strange. That he had given her something that had been loved before. It seemed too personal a thing for a stranger. Outside, after, the whole town threw rice and hollered. May's father shook Cole's hand for a long time, and May watched her father's face and saw the relief there, plain as a bill paid. The Holloway land had been failing for 3 seasons. Cole Hargrove's name on a marriage certificate was the difference between losing the farm and keeping it. May knew that. She had always known that. What she had not known was the feeling of Cole's hand at the small of her back, guiding her through the crowd to the wagon, and how that hand felt different from what she had expected. Not possessive, not careless. Careful somehow. Like he knew she was something that could be frightened. They rode out to the Hargrove Ranch in the late afternoon, the sun going red and low over the flats. And Cole did not try to fill the silence with talk. May had braced herself for talk, for questions she didn't know how to answer, for the kind of cheerful, forced conversation that made her feel like a trapped animal. Instead, he drove and let the quiet be what it was. She looked at his hands on the reins. Large hands, the kind that showed years of work in every knuckle. Not the hands of a man who had been rich forever. "You built it yourself," she said. It came out of her without planning. He glanced at her sideways. "Built what?" "All of it. The ranch. You didn't inherit it." A pause. The horses moved through the cooling air. "Most of it," he said. "My father left me 40 head and a broken fence." Took me 11 years to get from that to where we are." She thought about that. 11 years. She was 18. 11 years ago, she had been 7 years old, and this man had been 20, working ground that everyone else had written off. "Why?" she asked. "So why what? Why'd you want it that bad?" He was quiet long enough that she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Because wanting something that bad is the only thing that makes a man feel real." The wagon rolled on. The ranch came into view around a long bend, the main house sitting solid and square against the fading sky, lights already burning in the windows. Someone had lit them before they arrived. Someone had thought ahead. It was a real house, bigger than her father's house by twice, a porch all the way around. Flower boxes under the windows with something still alive in them. "Flower boxes," she said. "My housekeeper's doing." A pause. "Or yours now, I suppose, if you want to keep them." May said nothing. She was looking at the house and feeling something she could not name, and did not want to name because naming it might change it. They went inside. A woman named Dottie had left supper on the stove, warm and covered. The house smelled like wood smoke and something cooking long and slow and good. May stood in the front room and looked at the furniture. Solid things, made to last. A stone fireplace with a mantel clock ticking a steady beat into the quiet. Cole set her bag down at the foot of the stairs. He took off his coat and hung it. He moved around his own house like he had earned every inch of it. "You hungry?" he asked. "Not really," she said. "All right." He went to the fire and added a log, and the flames rose orange and steady. "Sit down, May. You've been standing like you're waiting to run since the ceremony." She sat. She hadn't realized she'd been doing that. Outside the window, Cutter Creek was somewhere behind them. Her father's kitchen table was behind her, and everything ahead was this house, this man, this life she had not chosen and could not return. The clock ticked. The fire popped. Cole settled into the chair across from her, long legs stretched out, watching the flames instead of her. May Holloway looked at her wedding ring. She was 18 years old, and she had no idea what came next. Neither fear nor courage felt like enough for what she was carrying. The fire kept burning. The night had not even started. Cole poured 2 cups of coffee from the pot Dottie had left, and he set one on the side table near May without asking if she wanted it. The cup was plain white ceramic, chipped at the rim, the kind of cup a person actually used instead of displayed. May wrapped her hands around it because the room had grown cool and the warmth was real. She drank. It was good coffee, strong without being bitter. She had expected bitter. "You think I'm a stranger?" Cole said. He wasn't asking. May looked at him across the fire. "You are a stranger." "Yes," he agreed. "So are you." He drank from his own cup. "Doesn't have to stay that way." May studied the fireplace, and the stone had been laid by hand. She could see the marks of it, each piece fitted to the next with careful judgment, nothing machine-cut or uniform. Someone had stood here for a long time, deciding where each stone belonged. "Did you lay this yourself?" she said. Cole followed her eyes to the fireplace. "First winter. Took me 3 weeks. Did it wrong twice before I got it right." "You kept the wrong ones in there." He looked at her. A real look, like she had said something that caught him off guard. "What makes you say that?" "The 2 stones left of center. They don't fit the same as the rest. They're older. You could have pulled them and reset them, but you didn't." The fire crackled. Cole set his cup down slowly. "You've got sharp eyes, May Holloway." May Hargrove, she said. She hadn't meant to say it. It came out the way things come out when you're testing the weight of something new. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Outside, the night had gone full dark, and the wind had picked up, pressing against the windows with a low, steady voice. May heard it and thought of her bedroom at her father's house, the way the same wind sounded through the thin walls there, and how she had listened to it her whole life like a companion. This house didn't shiver at the wind. "You're not what I expected," she said. Cole looked at her without reacting. "What did you expect?" "Something easier to dislike." That got him. On the corner of his mouth moved again. Deeper this time, a real thing. "I'll try harder." May almost smiled. She caught it before it fully arrived and pressed her mouth together and looked at the fire. But something had shifted in her chest, small and unmistakable, like a latch coming open on a door she had thought was sealed shut. She set her cup down. Her hands were not cold anymore. "Tell me something true," she said. "Not something polite. Something true." Cole looked at her for a long moment. The fire threw light and shadow across his face in alternating measure. "I was married before," he said. 3 years. She died. Fever. 5 years ago. May did not look away. "I know. The whole town knows." "Then you know I'm not doing this because I needed someone to run the house. Why are you doing it?" He was quiet. The clock on the mantel counted the silence. "Because this place is too quiet," he said. "Quan and I got tired of building things and having nobody to show them to." May heard that land and felt it land somewhere undefended, somewhere she hadn't thought to guard. She hated that it landed that way. She hated how honest it was. "That's not romantic," she said. "No," he said, "it's not. I appreciate that." He looked at her steadily. "I know you didn't choose this. I know your father's situation. I want you to know I don't think of that as a debt you owe me. Your father's land is his business. What happens inside this house is ours." May processed that. The word ours sat in the air between them. "What do you want from me?" she said. "Direct." She had decided on direct. Cole leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and looked at the fire instead of her when he answered, which she understood was its own kind of courtesy. "I want a real marriage," he said. "Not a performance of one. I want someone who'll tell me when I'm wrong. I want someone at this table who actually thinks something about what's on it, not just someone who says the food is fine and means nothing by it." A pause. "And someday, when you're ready, if you ever are, I'd want a family. But that part is not a condition. It's just the truth of what I'd hoped for." May sat with that. The fire burned. She thought about her father's face at the ceremony. The relief. She thought about the flower boxes. She thought about the wrong stones in the fireplace that he had kept. "I don't know how to be a wife," she said. "I don't know what I think about half the things you just said. I'm 18, and I've never lived anywhere except my father's house, and I don't know you." "I know that," he said. "But I'm not a child. I want you to know that too." He met her eyes. "I know that too. That's not why I kept the wrong stones." She didn't understand that immediately. Then she did. The wrong stones. Amongst the things that didn't fit perfectly, but had been part of building something real. He was telling her he didn't want her to be a finished product. He wanted her to be a person. 18 years old, cold coffee, a fire going warm. May Holloway, May Hargrove, felt the tears come before she had any idea they were arriving. She was not sad. She could not have said what she was. The tears came anyway, the way weather comes when the pressure has been building long enough. And then she pressed her hand over her mouth and turned her face and tried to stop them. Cole did not say anything. He did not move toward her or away from her. He let her have it, the way you let a storm have what it needs. That was the thing that broke her open completely. She wept, not prettily, not quietly. And all the months of knowing this was coming and not knowing what it would be, and being afraid and not being allowed to say so. All of it came out of her in the firelight and in front of a man she didn't know who had kept the wrong stones. When it finally slowed, she pressed her palms against her eyes and breathed. "I'm sorry," she said. "Don't be," he said. May looked at him. His face was the same. Steady. The canyon face, and nothing about it suggested she had embarrassed herself or done something wrong. He just looked at her like she was a person who had needed to cry and had cried. And that was the entire, uncomplicated story of the last 5 minutes. She exhaled. "I'm going to go to bed," she said. "I'm very tired." "The room at the top of the stairs," he said. "I had Dottie put fresh linens on this morning. Take the room. I'll be down here." She stood. She looked at him one more moment. "Thank you," she said. And she meant it, though for what exactly she could not fully have said. Maybe for the coffee. Maybe for the wrong stones. Maybe for letting her cry without making it into something it wasn't. She went up the stairs. The room was clean and cool, and the bed was made with a quilt that had clearly been washed many times. Soft in the way only truly used things get soft. May sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the wind and the clock ticking below and the sound of Cole moving quietly in the house. The sound of a man who knew how to be in a space without filling it with noise. She lay down in her wedding dress because she was too tired to fight the buttons. She was asleep before the clock struck 10. May woke before sunrise. The house was still. The fire downstairs had burned to embers, and the cold had moved in from the corners the way it does in high desert at the hour just before dawn, reaching past the quilts, touching her face with its flat gray fingers. She was still in her wedding dress. The buttons along her spine had cut into her sleep and left small aches she felt when she moved. She sat up. The room looked different from how it had the night before. Last night, it had been a strange room. This morning, it was just a room. 4 walls, a window facing east, a washstand with a china pitcher that had a small blue flower painted on the side. Someone's room before her, and now her room, and the difference between those two things was still too large to fully think about. She went to the window. The land was vast in the pre-dawn dark, rolling out flat and then breaking into low hills to the north where the cattle would be sleeping or already stirring. She could see the shape of the barn, the fence lines, and the dark seam of a creek bed cutting across the near pasture. All of it quiet, all of it still. Like the world was holding itself right at the edge of something. She had grown up on failing land. Land that apologized for itself, that gave you less each year and kept a running tally of what it owed and couldn't pay. This land didn't apologize for anything. It just was what it was, enormous and dry and entirely sure of itself. She could hear Cole moving in the kitchen below. The sound of a pump handle, water running, the stove being fed. May undid what buttons she could reach on her own and wrestled herself out of the wedding dress, folding it with careful hands, even though part of her wanted to throw it out the window. She found her bag where Cole had left it at the foot of the stairs. He must have brought it up while she slept. And she changed into a plain work dress, the kind she had worn at her father's house. Laced her boots. Pulled her hair back. She went downstairs. Cole was at the stove. He had not yet shaved, and the stubble along his jaw made him look rougher, more like what she had imagined before she met him. He was cracking eggs into a pan with the ease of someone who had been feeding himself for a long time and knew exactly how he liked it done. He heard her on the stairs and turned his head just slightly. "Morning," he said. Not loud. The word fit the hour. "Morning," she said. He nodded at the pot. "Coffee's hot?" She poured herself a cup and stood at the window over the basin and looked out at the yard while the sky began to lighten, the dark blue pulling back from the east like a curtain being slowly opened. The horses in the near corral were moving. A dog she hadn't seen the night before was sitting at the barn door with the patient dignity of an animal that had learned waiting was most of life. "You have a dog," she said. "That's Clyde. He's not friendly." "He looks friendly. He looks like whatever he needs to look like to get what he wants." May watched Clyde sit in the gray light and thought that was probably true of a lot of things. Cole put a plate on the table. Eggs, 2 strips of side pork, a thick slice of bread with butter already going soft in the warmth. He set it across from his own plate, which he'd already half finished, and sat down. May sat. She ate. It was good. Simple and real and good. You know, the way food tastes when you're actually hungry and not performing hunger at someone else's table. "I want to work," she said. Cole looked at her. "I don't want to sit in the house," she said. "I don't want to be furniture. I want to know what you do out there and how it works, and I want to be useful." He held his coffee cup and looked at her with that measuring expression that she was beginning to understand was not appraisal, but actual attention. The difference was significant. "You know anything about cattle?" he said. "I know what I watched at my father's. Not the same scale as this, but the principles aren't different." "Can you ride?" "Since I was 6. He nodded once. "Then you ride with me today. I'll show you the north pasture and the fence line we're mending this week. After that, you tell me what you think you can do, and we go from there." A pause. "I'm not going to hand you work to keep you busy. If you're going to learn this place, you learn the real of it." May ate a bite of bread. "Good," she said. Outside, the sun had finally crested the hills, and the light came through the window in a long, flat blade across the kitchen table, catching the steam from the coffee cups and turning it gold for just a moment before the angles shifted and it was gone. She noticed Cole notice it. "Happens every clear morning," he said, almost to himself. "I've eaten at this table for 7 years and it still gets me." May looked at the spot where the light had been. She thought about what he had said the night before, building things and having nobody to show them to. She understood that now in a way she hadn't the night before. Not as a sad thing, as a true thing. She finished her breakfast. "The horses needed saddling," Cole said, and he stood and put his plate in the basin and his hat on his head. And May followed him out into the morning. And the land came up around them, enormous and patient and lit through with gold. And for the first time since she had sat in the back room of the chapel listening to the organ, May Holloway took a full breath and held it and let it go. The fence line was 3 miles north. They would ride. And she was not afraid. The north pasture fence had been cut. Cole saw it from 30 yards out, and his whole body went still in the saddle in the way that May would come to recognize over the following months as his particular mode of controlled fury. Not explosive, not loud. Just this complete and purposeful stillness, like a hawk before it drops. He dismounted before she had fully stopped her horse and was walking the line, crouching at intervals, reading the ground the way she had heard trackers could read it. "How many?" May said. 3 riders, maybe 4. He straightened, looked north, where the hills rolled up and hid whatever was beyond them. They came at night, took maybe 40 head from this section. May looked at the cut wire, the churned earth, the trail of displaced grass heading north. She had grown up listening to her father talk about the men who ran cattle on the far side of the ridge, the Dunmore outfit, who had a long history of feeling that property lines were suggestions rather than laws, when Cole Hargrove's name wasn't yet a name anyone was afraid of. It was a name people were afraid of now. "Dunmore," she said. Cole looked at her sideways. "Everyone in Cutter Creek knows Dunmore takes what he thinks he can take," she said. "The timing is deliberate. First day you're away from the ranch." Cole's jaw tightened. He looked north again. "Ride back to the house," he said. "Just tell Pete to bring 4 men and the roan horse and meet me at the north water tank." "I'm coming with you," May said. "No. You don't know what I can do. I know exactly what Dunmore will do if he sees a woman riding with me. It changes what he's willing to risk. Ride back to the house, May." She wanted to argue. She looked at his face and understood that he was not dismissing her. He was making a calculation about exposure and liability, and he was right. She hated that he was right on her first morning. She turned her horse. She did not ride slowly. Pete Carey was the ranch foreman, a narrow, sunburned man with 30 years of range work written in every line of his face. And when May rode into the yard and relayed Cole's message, he moved without a word, hollering 2 names before he'd even finished turning. And within 10 minutes, 4 men were mounted and moving north. May stood in the yard and watched them go. She went inside and stood in the kitchen and looked at the coffee pot still warm on the stove, and felt the uselessness of standing in a kitchen while something real was happening 3 miles away. She found the gun cabinet in the back room, unlocked. Cole had not bothered to lock it, probably out of habit, probably because until yesterday there had been no one in this house to consider. There was a rifle and a short-barreled shotgun and a revolver with a cracked grip wrapped in leather twine. She checked them all, loaded the revolver, set it on the kitchen table in the plain light of morning. She started cleaning. Not because the house was dirty, but because she needed to do something with her hands while she thought about 40 head of cattle and a cut fence, and a man she had known for exactly 1 day riding north into someone else's anger. She found the house in a state of functional disorder, the kind that builds in a house where one person has lived alone long enough to stop seeing it. She didn't clean to judge it. She cleaned because she was thinking, and thinking required motion. She found the ledger books in the desk in the front room, and she opened them. Numbers. Rows and rows of numbers in Cole's handwriting, tight and economical. The writing of a man who was precise about information. She followed the columns. Purchase prices, sale prices, head counts by pasture, water costs, feed costs, wages, equipment. She was not an educated woman in the formal sense, but her father had made her keep his books since she was 12 because he could not hold numbers in his head, and she could. And what she was looking at now was not the ruin of a man's finances, but it was not the effortless prosperity she had imagined either. Cole Hargrove was a rich man who worked like he was still poor because the numbers told him he had to. But she found the section on the north pasture and worked backward through 3 years of head counts. The margins were tighter than the total picture suggested. Those 40 head were not merely a theft. They were a deliberate wound to a specific section. Dunmore knew the books. Dunmore had someone inside the ranch. May set the pen down and looked at the window. The men had been gone 2 hours when the sound of horses came back into the yard. More horses than had left. and May took the revolver from the table without thinking about it and went to the door. Cole came through the gate first, 40 head behind him, 3 of his men flanking the cattle with the ease of people who had done this 1,000 times. Behind the cattle, hands tied to his saddle horn, rode a man May had seen once before at the Cutter Creek feed store, young, maybe 20. A Dunmore hand named Rory Neal, who had the look of a person who had made a very bad bet and was currently adding up the interest. Pete Carey rode close behind him. Cole dismounted in the yard and handed his reins to a hand and looked at May in the doorway with the revolver. He did not comment on the revolver. "Good count," he said. 42. They picked up 2 of mine that had wandered the fence. Dunmore himself? Wasn't there. Sent the boy. He glanced back at Rory Neal, May still sitting tied to his saddle with the expression of a man hoping hard that things didn't get worse. "He's got someone on your books," May said. Cole stopped. "Someone who knows which pasture is carrying thin margins this season. This wasn't a random cut. They went for the exact section where losing 40 head hurts most without breaking the whole operation." She paused. "I read the ledgers. I hope that's all right." Cole looked at her for a long moment. The sun was past noon now, heating the yard to a dry burn. And somewhere behind the barn, Clyde the dog was barking at something that probably deserved it. "That's more than all right," Cole said. "You need to find who's feeding them information before you decide what to do with him." She nodded at Rory Neal. Cole turned and looked at Rory Neal with an expression that made the young man go visibly pale. "Bring him inside," Cole said to Pete. Then to May, "Put the coffee on." May went inside and put the coffee on. So she was not furniture. She was not afraid. She was something else now. Something she didn't have a name for yet. Something that had apparently been waiting under all the months of dread to find out whether this life was worth entering. And it was turning out to be a thing with edges. A thing with real problems inside it. A thing that required the actual version of her rather than the performed version. The clock on the mantel was still ticking. The fire needed wood. Sorry, May added a log and stood back and let it catch. The hand who had been feeding information to Dunmore was a man named Cal Briggs. 3rd year hire, quiet and forgettable in the way that useful liabilities always are. Rory Neal, faced with Cole Hargrove's particular brand of absolute calm on one side and the alternative of facing Dunmore's fury for failing on the other, had calculated the math and chosen to talk. Cal Briggs was gone by sundown. No violence. Cole walked him to the property line with his wages, and one clear sentence that Pete Carey heard and later repeated quietly to May while she was checking the horses. "Come back, and I'll know before you get to the gate." Nobody doubted it. Dunmore would hear what happened to his plan within days. What he chose to do with that information would tell Cole what kind of fight was actually coming. That evening, May sat at the kitchen table with the ledger open, a piece of paper beside it, and began rewriting the column notes in a cleaner hand with the corrections she had spotted. Cole came in at dark, washed at the basin, sat across from her. He looked at what she was doing. "You don't have to do that," he said. "I know," she said. "I want to." The 3rd column in the September accounts is entered wrong. It's throwing your quarterly total by $11. Small, but it'll compound. Cole leaned over and looked where she was pointing. He was quiet for a moment. $11, he said. 11 now. 36 by the end of the year, if nothing changes. He sat back. He had the look of a man revising something. "Who taught you figures?" he said. "My father's incompetence." The corner of his mouth moved. May was beginning to map those movements. A slight shift meant mild amusement. A fuller one meant genuine delight. And the fuller one was rare enough to mean something. This was a slight shift, but it reached his eyes, which was a new category entirely. She went back to the ledger. They worked at the table together until the lamp needed trimming. Cole going through the correspondence that had piled while he was planning the wedding, and May going through the accounts. And the silence between them was not the silence of two strangers managing their discomfort. It was a working silence, the kind that builds between people who are thinking alongside each other. It was the best silence May had experienced in a long time. At some point, Dottie had left a covered pot, and May served them both from it without being asked, and Cole ate without comment but cleaned his bowl, which she took as the only review that mattered. "There's something I should tell you about Dunmore," May said. Cole looked up. "My father borrowed from him 3 years ago when the East Fields failed. $20, which became 40, which became a debt my father has been paying interest on ever since. Dunmore holds paper on 2 other families in Cutter Creek the same way. The cutting of your fence wasn't only about cattle. You marrying me took an asset off the board he thought he'd eventually own." Cole set his spoon down. "Your father told you this," he said. "My father told me nothing. I kept his books." Cole looked at her across the table in the lamplight, and May met his eyes and did not look away, and did not soften the information or apologize for bringing it, because it was what it was and he needed to know it. "How long have you known this was the situation?" he said. 6 months. Since my father told me there was a marriage being arranged." She paused. "I was afraid you'd be someone I couldn't respect. That was the part I couldn't manage. Not the leaving, not the change, just the possibility that the man I was being handed to would be someone I had to pretend with." The clock ticked. The lamp threw warm gold across the table between them. "And now," Cole said. May looked at the ledger and then at him. "Now I'm more worried about Dunmore than anything else," she said. Cole almost smiled. The full kind. It lasted only a second, and then it was gone, absorbed back into the canyon face. But May had seen it, and she knew what it meant, and she filed it away in the part of herself that was very carefully, very privately, beginning to build something she was not yet ready to name. "We'll deal with Dunmore," Cole said. "Yes," said May. "We will." Outside, Cutter Creek was dark, and the stars were the blinding kind you only get far from any town's light, thick as scattered salt across a black cloth. And the wind had dropped to nothing. And the land lay quiet all around the house that Cole Hargrove had built, with 11 years of wanting something real. May closed the ledger. She went upstairs. She did not cry. She lay in the dark in the room that was becoming her room, and listened to the sounds of the house and the land around it. And what she felt was not the hollow terror of the wedding morning or the grief of the chapel organ. What she felt was awake. Fully, completely, for the first time in longer than she could account for. Awake. The clock ticked below. The stars burned outside the window. 18 years old. One day a wife. 100,000 acres of dark land under a blazing sky. Whatever was coming, she would meet it standing. She always had.